to Loving God and Loving Life. We're in Hebrews chapter 12, where we find the theme is that God is our Father and that He disciplines us for our good. I'll just read you very quickly the first verse. If you remember the last chapter, chapter 11, God listed these heroes of faith, and then He goes and says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, He's referring to all the heroes that He just listed in chapter 11. Since we're surrounded by, these people of faith, He says, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God sets before us. So He's saying God is going to set a race in front of you. Now, if you know anything about a race, the one defining thing, I don't care what kind of a race, if it's a 5K race, a marathon, 100 yards, there's one thing that always defines a race. That somebody set up a track and a course, and you don't get to choose your own course if you're gonna win that race. If you're gonna run a race, you're gonna have to stay within certain parameters. You can't just choose, if you're running a marathon, you can't say, I'm just gonna skip this, I'm gonna go left here. Quite often they're on roads, you understand? No, you can't do that. If you're running a 200-meter race, you gotta stay in your own lane. God has designed our life that way. We don't see it. Our heads don't see it. We see life as just random, and we think God will, He's the Spirit out there. But no. The Bible again and again goes back to this, that God is leading. In fact, this chapter, one of the boldest declarations of God's sovereignty is declared here, where God just skipping back to the 10th chapter, he commended them for joyfully accepting the confiscation of their property. And then He says in this chapter, the chapter that we're in right now, chapter 12, He says that if you endure this divine discipline, remember that God is treating you as His own children. Now, He's black and white. He's saying that the difficulty that's in their face, this persecution that they're experiencing, is God's will. It's God's discipline. That's exact. You can't read it any other way. Now, our brains would say, what in the world would confiscation of property? That could never have anything to do with God's will. Well, that's not what this chapter says. God absolutely declares it to be His discipline. Absolutely. Now, gang, we can go into a lot of depths here. It's easily historically accurate, able to look back and say that, this church had a lot of zeal, a lot more fire. The faith spread across the world like a fire. Well, it was the persecution. We see it now. It was the persecution that caused that. So it makes a little bit more sense to our brains now. But it's just the same today. When we have difficult things come down the pipe and come down in our face, do we accept them as the will of God and think, you know what? God's looking for a certain response here. He's looking for how I'm going to deal with this. It's discipline. Gang, that's the way God portrays your life. And a lot of things are. They're tough. They're challenging. But we can find the grace to respond correctly. We can find the grace to do the right thing, and we're going to watch, slow but sure, as God rewards our lives, as He rewards our faith, as He rewards it with good things. And that is the joy. That's the fruitfulness. That's that promised land. That's that place of rest that Hebrews declares that God has for us if we will trust Him. Gang, let's trust Him. We have a life of faith that leads us to the best place in this world and in the world beyond. Thank God for His grace. And we've got something to share. We've got the grace of Jesus Christ. So let's share that love today. God, today, send us one person today to share your love with. My friends, let's never forget that loving God, doing God's will is the only way to truly love your life.